Liverpool, summer afternoons. The sound of an ice cream van drifting through the streets was as familiar as the seagulls overhead. Parents handed coins to their kids, who queued for cones and slushies at cheerful dessert bars like Mikey's Sweet Dreams or Botatelli's ice cream. To the community, these were harmless neighbourhood spots, places for treats, laughter, and a moment of sweetness in everyday life. But detectives would later uncover something darker behind the sprinkles and waffle cones. These shops were not just selling desserts, they were fronts for laundering millions in cocaine money, part of a wider criminal economy that stretched from Merseyside to South America. At the same time, a separate Liverpool crew was chasing bigger dreams: direct importation. In May 2013, Border Force officers at Tilbury Docks in Essex pried open a container of frozen beef from Argentina. Hidden inside were 16 holdalls packed with 400 kilograms of cocaine with a street value of nearly £90 million. It was one of the largest seizures in British history, and its fingerprints led back to a Merseyside smuggling ring led by Ian Stanton, a 42-year-old from Liverpool who would soon become one of Britain's most wanted men. The combination of these cases, the Wigan Ice Cream Parlour laundromat, and the Liverpool £90 million smuggling plot revealed the two faces of Merseyside's drug underworld. On one side, community shops hiding cocaine profits in plain sight. On the other, international networks importing tons of high-purity drugs through global shipping routes. To the outside world, it looked like ice cream vans and family businesses, but beneath the surface, it was cocaine, cash, and corruption. And when the police finally moved in, the betrayal of trust would shock entire communities. At first glance, Mikey's Sweet Dreams looked like any other dessert parlour. Bright signage, milkshakes on the menu, colourful tubs of gelato lined up behind glass. Families came in for sundaes. Teenagers loitered around with cones in hand. And to the community, it was just another cheerful spot in Wigan's town centre. But behind that counter, police would later find digital scales, cutting agents, and mixing bowls dusted with white powder. Not icing sugar, but cocaine. The parlour was less a place for desserts and more a workshop for diluting and packaging Class A drugs. It was all part of a carefully constructed facade. The masterminds were Paul Witter, a 43-year-old with a reputation on the streets, the Talbot brothers, Mark, Michael and Cameron, who managed logistics and cash, and their supplier, Paul Whitaker, a seasoned 55-year-old dealer who ran the upstream supply. Whitaker's right-hand man, Thomas Tither, acted as a go-between, ensuring kilos moved smoothly from stash houses into the hands of Witter and the Talbots. Their setup was clever. Ice cream businesses are cash-heavy by nature. Hundreds of small transactions a day. Coins and notes passed over the counter. Little to no card trail. That gave them the perfect cover to launder huge sums. They inflated their daily takings, slipping drug profits into the tills so that dirty cash blended seamlessly with genuine sales. The gang didn't stop at just one shop. Alongside Mikey's Sweet Dreams, they ran Botatelli's ice cream and a takeaway named Spudway, a parody of Subway that sold fast food while doubling as a money-washing hub. On the books, these businesses looked like booming local eateries. In reality, they were funnels for millions in cocaine revenue. To the parents who stopped in after school runs, nothing seemed amiss. But in truth, the same till that rang up ice cream cones was helping bankroll one of the biggest drug conspiracies the region had ever seen. The betrayal of trust wouldn't come to light until years later, when police peeled back the glossy surface and exposed the cocaine empire hiding behind sprinkles and milkshakes. While the Wigan crew laundered their profits through tubs of ice cream and takeaway counters, Liverpool's bigger players were chasing something far more ambitious. They weren't content with middleman profits. They wanted to import cocaine on an industrial scale, enough to flood Britain's streets for months. In May 2013, Border Force officers at Tilbury Docks in Essex flagged a suspicious shipping container. On the manifest, It was listed as frozen beef from Argentina, a perfectly ordinary import. But when they sliced open the sides of the consignment, they discovered 16 black holdalls stuffed with 400 kilograms of high-purity cocaine. The haul had a potential street value of £90 million. It was one of the largest seizures in British history. Investigators quickly traced the conspiracy back to Merseyside. The suspected ringleader was Ian Stanton, a 42-year-old from Liverpool with a reputation for being both connected and elusive. As soon as the seizure was announced, Stanton disappeared, becoming one of Britain's most wanted fugitives. His associate, David McDermott, thought he had outsmarted everyone. McDermott had fled to Ghana, married into the family of a senior official at the Bank of Ghana, and lived lavishly in Accra. For 3 years he enjoyed life in an upmarket compound, convinced his ties would shield him. But in 2016, Ghanaian police and the UK's National Crime Agency, NCA, smashed through his door. McDermott was arrested and extradited back to Britain to face trial. 6 of Stanton's other associates weren't so lucky. They were caught, convicted, and handed a combined 64 years in prison. The £90 million Tilbury bus proved just how international Liverpool's reach had become. This wasn't about local turf wars or small cash businesses. It was about direct pipelines from South America to Merseyside, with containers of meat hiding fortunes in cocaine. For Stanton and his crew, the dream was control of Britain's cocaine supply. For the authorities, it was a reminder that Liverpool had become one of Europe's key gateways in the global drug trade. On paper, the Wigan crew looked like ambitious small business owners. They had not one but 3 shops: Mikey's Sweet Dreams, Botatelli's Ice Cream, and the fast food joint Spudway. From the outside, they looked like the picture of entrepreneurial hustle, a family running dessert parlours and takeaways, cash tills jingling late into the night. But detectives would later testify that these businesses were never designed to turn a profit from milkshakes or chips. Their real purpose was laundering the vast sums generated by cocaine sales. The system was simple but effective. Ice cream shops are cash-heavy, meaning hundreds of small, untraceable transactions each day. By inflating their takings, the gang could mix dirty money with genuine sales. To HMRC and the banks, it all looked legitimate. No one could tell whether a £20 note came from a cone or from a bag of cocaine. Behind the counters, things looked even less innocent. During raids, police recovered digital scales, bags of cutting agents, mixing bowls, and traces of cocaine powder. These weren't just businesses, they were processing labs, where bricks of cocaine were cut down into smaller, street-ready packages. The gang even used coded language in their communications. In text messages, drugs became tickets, while purity was ranked as championship or Champions League. Ledger sheets found in the raids showed debts running into tens of thousands of pounds, tick lists of who owed what, from street dealers up to mid-level distributors. At the top, Paul Whitaker and his lieutenant Thomas Tither managed the wholesale supply. Below them, Paul Witter and the Talbot brothers controlled the businesses, kept the money moving, and oversaw crews of street dealers who pushed the product onto Wigan streets. For years, it worked flawlessly. Parents bought their kids ice cream cones, never suspecting that the same till ringing up sprinkles was also washing the proceeds of one of the region's biggest cocaine conspiracies. It was crime hidden in plain sight, a sweet facade masking bitter corruption. By 2018, whispers had reached Greater Manchester Police. The dessert bars in Wigan, Mikey's Sweet Dreams, Botatelli's Ice Cream, and Spudway were doing unusually well for small shops in a modest town. The takings didn't add up. The owners were driving luxury cars, wearing designer watches, and flashing wealth that far outstripped what milkshakes and chips could ever provide. Detectives launched Operation Trinket, a surveillance mission aimed at uncovering what lay beneath the sprinkles and smiles. Covert officers followed delivery vans that should have been carrying tubs of ice cream, but instead made strange late-night journeys across town. They watched as holdalls were passed from cars to shop doors. They intercepted text messages filled with coded references, tickets for ounces of cocaine, Champions League for the highest purity. Slowly, a picture began to form. These weren't businesses at all. They were the facade of a drug empire. The breakthrough came in July 2018. In a series of dawn raids, officers stormed the homes and businesses tied to the gang. What they found confirmed every suspicion. Inside Mikey's Sweet Dreams, police discovered digital scales, cutting agents, and mixing bowls dusted with cocaine. In a van belonging to the Talbot family, officers unzipped an Umbro sports bag stuffed with high-purity cocaine, ready for distribution. Raids on other properties turned up luxury cars, jewelry, designer clothes, stacks of cash, and phones crammed with incriminating messages. Ledger sheets showed debts and transactions running into tens of thousands of pounds. It was clear the gang had been moving drugs on an industrial scale since 2011. The community was stunned. The shops parents trusted for after-school treats had been drug factories. "I used to take my kids in there for milkshakes," one neighbor told reporters. "We had no idea. Operation Trinket had blown the lid off the facade." What looked like harmless ice cream shops were exposed as the beating heart of a 7-year cocaine conspiracy. And for the first time, the men behind the counters were facing the full weight of the law. The raids were just the beginning. The true test came when the evidence of Operation Trinket was laid out in front of a jury at Bolton Crown Court in 2022. 8 defendants stood accused. At the top sat Paul Whitaker, the 55-year-old upstream supplier, already serving a 12-year sentence for another cocaine plot. His lieutenant, Thomas Tither, faced fresh charges alongside him. Then there were the brothers, Mark, Michael, and Cameron Talbot, each with their own role in running the shops and moving the money. Paul Whitaker's key distributor, stood shoulder to shoulder with them. Alongside them, David Barnes faced charges for his part in the operation. Finally, Jane Witter, Paul's wife, was accused of laundering the gang's dirty money. The trial ran for 6 weeks. Jurors were shown photographs of the Umbro Sports holdall packed with cocaine. They saw the seized digital scales, the cutting agents, the mixing bowls found inside Mikey's Sweet Dreams. They heard forensic experts testify about cocaine traces discovered in the shops, and they read the coded text messages where tickets meant ounces and Champions League described the purity. The prosecution painted a picture of an organized professional conspiracy, a network that had operated for 7 years, channeling millions in drugs and washing the profits through ice cream and takeaway tills. Some defendants cracked early. Paul Witter and Mark Talbot pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply cocaine and launder money. Jane Witter admitted to laundering, but insisted she had little knowledge of the scale. The rest held out, protesting innocence, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury returned guilty verdicts across the board. Sentences were heavy. Paul Whitaker, 13 years, on top of his existing 12. Mark Talbot and Paul Witter, 7 years each, consecutive to earlier terms. Michael Talbot, 4.5 years. Cameron Talbot, 6 years. Thomas Tither, 6 years. David Barnes, 4.5 years. Jane Witter, a suspended sentence. In total, the Ice Cream Cartel received nearly 70 years of prison time. For the community, the verdicts were bittersweet. Justice had been served, but the trust in those neighbourhood shops was gone forever. While the Wigan Ice Cream Parlour gang faced trial, detectives across Britain were still untangling another thread of Merseyside's drug web, one that stretched far beyond dessert shops and cash tills. In May 2013, at Tilbury Docks in Essex, Border Force officers opened a shipping container that was supposed to be filled with frozen beef from Argentina. Inside, they found 16 black holdalls crammed with 400 kilograms of high-purity cocaine. Its street value, nearly £90 million. The seizure made headlines instantly. This wasn't a local gang parcel. This was industrial-scale trafficking. the kind that could flood entire regions with cocaine for months, and investigators quickly realized the conspiracy led back to Liverpool. At the center was Ian Stanton, a 42-year-old from Merseyside who vanished as soon as the bust went public. Branded as one of Britain's most wanted men, Stanton represented the ambition of Liverpool's underworld: cut out the middlemen, deal direct with the South American cartels, and seize control of Britain's cocaine trade. His associate, David McDermott, thought he had escaped. McDermott fled to Ghana, married into the family of a senior Bank of Ghana official, and lived in luxury in an upscale compound in Accra. For 3 years, he enjoyed a life of wealth and influence, believing his connections made him untouchable. But in 2016, Ghanaian police and the UK's National Crime Agency stormed his home. McDermott was arrested and extradited to Britain, where he would finally face justice. In total, 6 members of Stanton's crew were jailed for a combined 64 years. The bust was hailed as one of the NCA's landmark victories, stopping a massive pipeline before it could flood Liverpool streets. "We prevented a huge quantity of cocaine from ever hitting the UK," one official said at the time. For detectives, it proved what many already suspected. Merseyside wasn't just a hub for laundering cocaine money. It was also a key gateway for importation, with global links from South America to Europe and straight into Britain's ports. When the headlines hit, dealers used ice cream parlours to launder millions. The community was stunned. Parents who had once treated their children to milkshakes at Mikey's Sweet Dreams or cones at Botatelli's ice cream felt betrayed. What they thought were cheerful neighbourhood shops had in fact been cocaine laundromats, hiding drugs and dirty money in plain sight. The betrayal cut deep because it was ordinary. Ice cream shops were supposed to be safe, family-friendly places. That was exactly why the front worked so well. It showed how organised crime thrives when it looks invisible, when it wears the mask of normality. For law enforcement, the Wigan case became a textbook example of how gangs exploit cash-heavy businesses. Ice cream parlours, takeaways, car washes, all industries that handle huge amounts of untraceable cash. To investigators, the lesson was clear. If a small shop is flashing wealth far beyond its means, it could be more than just good business. The £90 million Tilbury bust added another layer to the legacy. It proved that Merseyside's underworld wasn't just about local laundering. It was plugged into the global cocaine pipeline, striking deals with cartels in South America and using Britain's ports as entry points. From a humble dessert shop to an international container shipment, the story carried the same lesson. Crime hides best in the everyday. For the families of Wigan and Liverpool, the damage went beyond the headlines. Trust in their own communities had been shaken. The idea that a man serving your kids ice cream could also be fueling a drug empire left scars that didn't fade with prison sentences. And yet, for police, both cases were victories. Nearly 70 years of sentences handed down to the Wigan crew, 64 years to Stanton's men, millions in cocaine kept off the streets. But the haunting question remains: if ice cream vans and dessert bars can mask a cocaine empire, what else might be hiding in plain sight? Behind the smiles and sprinkles, the legacy of the ice cream cartel is a chilling reminder. Sometimes the sweetest front conceals the darkest trade.